What's up, Mike Hambright? Welcome back to the show, man. It's been a couple years.
Glad to be here. Yeah, your hair is longer. You've been in a couple different states. You're not afraid to show off your muscles anymore. Look at this. Where are we at?
I'll tell you what, man. It's so sunny out here in California. I can barely stay around. So I have to go. Yeah. Honestly, I was at the gym earlier, and I was sweating in the other shirt, and I'm going to Colorado tomorrow, so I kind of got my nice clothes packed. So I had to throw on the sleeve monster. So
yeah, there you go. Sleeveless monster.
Sleeveless. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Sleeveless monster. There we go. So last time you came on the show, it was actually a really popular episode. I had some people actually reach out to me like, dude, that show you did with Mike was really good. And I was like,
oh, cool.
Thank you. So I figured we do not a part 2 today, but more of like, I want to talk about the evolution of Mike Hambright as a real estate entrepreneur, because when you started, 10, 15 years ago, how long have you been in the game for now, Mike?
So 2008. So at this point, it's been like 14 years.
14 years. So that's like coming on to 2 decades sooner rather than later. So you have evolved heavily, right? From just starting out doing flipping, and you've built some amazing businesses that we're going to talk about later today on the show. So if people were not familiar with your journey before you got into the real estate industry, can you just kind of catch them up to speed a little bit?
Yeah. So I call myself a corporate refugee. So kind of follow the traditional path of having a job, job. Got a bunch of formal education because I thought that was the way forward, right? And then I found out that it wasn't. So kind of took my destiny into my own hands and jumped into real estate investing in 2008, really full time in 2008. We've been dabbling a little bit before that. Probably started in 2006, even maybe 6 or 5 even, but really got serious in 2008 and started really ramped up pretty fast, kind of doing 60, 70 houses a year, heavy rehabber. So kind of rehabbing probably 60, 70% of our deals and assigning the rest. And then started to keep some as rentals. And then, the way that all these businesses work, and I'm sure we'll dive into that today, is as you kind of go forward, you like bolt on, well, I want to keep some rentals. So now I have a rental company. And then I start doing some coaching. And so now I have a coaching business. And things just kind of get bolted on, as you kind of move forward, and you start to find your way and say, look, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do bigger multifamily deals or whatever. As things evolve, as we evolve, like we learn what we like and what we don't like. And we have kind of a radar for opportunity. And, that's kind of guided my path, is like, what's a good opportunity and what do I like to do? And so things are very different now than they were 14 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. Well, God bless you for being in the rehab business that long. I have like 2 or 3 projects going on right now, and one of them is infested with cockroaches, and I just want to jump off a freaking bridge, dealing with that kind of stuff. It's just I was talking with Frank Sanchez, who's actually an Investor Fuel member, the other day, and there's so many like uncontrollable constraints with the rental. If you're doing all full-blown rehabs, you could do all the right things and still end up getting hosed by 7 things that were out of your control. That's so true. It's funny how a lot of new investors, they think that wholesaling is like the gateway drug, but really the people that I know and that who are good friends of ours who really make the money are the ones wholesaling, right? Because that's a scalable business to a certain extent.
Or wholetailing. I mean, you know, for a long time now, you've been able to just clean them up a little bit, or maybe not at all, throw them on the MLS and take advantage of the shortage of inventory, if you will. Yeah.
The wholesale. Yeah. That is like the best of both worlds. Right. For sure. It's the construction, well, it's especially the permits, but that's a whole nother topic. So you started out, you still are obviously involved in the business. So once you got really, good at renovating and wholesaling, like what was your first move into like getting one of those other businesses that you had, i.e. rentals or the coaching? How did you start to ramp that up? Because with your Flip Nerd brand, that really took off like a rocket ship.
So Flip Nerd, the podcast started about 8.5 years ago. So truthfully, I was almost 6 years into the business before I ever had a podcast. And even 8.5 years ago, when I started my podcast, there were like 6 podcasts. Sean Terry had a podcast, Joe McCall, Jason Hartman had a couple. There were a couple others out there. Matt Terrio had a podcast. So there weren't very many. And the thing is at the time, I didn't know any of those guys. Now, most of those guys are my friends, but now there's hundreds of podcasts, right? Yeah. So at the time, I'll just kind of tell you how it happened. So first, I started keeping rentals because I really wanted mailbox money. Like I'll kind of use quotes, mailbox money. Now, by the way, it's not passive and it's not easy, no matter what anybody tells you. We're dealing with a tenant that burned down a house right now. There's always stuff like that you have to deal with. It's not as easy as just getting a check in your mailbox.
I wish it was.
But, that started happening. I was like, I don't want to manage these things. So I hired a property manager right from the beginning. But you still have to manage the manager, and a lot of the managers are a lot of property management can make or break your business as a rental. So you really have to kind of keep an eye on them. And it's not necessarily that they're doing anything wrong. Sometimes they might, but it's not that they're doing anything wrong. But sometimes they just, they're like all of us. Like, we're flying by the seat of our pants on some level, and stuff falls through the cracks, right? So that's where that was the first kind of new business, because we put them into a new entity, and then that comes with a whole nother set of bookkeeping, an additional tax return, like all that. It sounds easy, but the stuff, it gets complicated.
Very
when I first started the business, for the first couple of years, I really was hesitant to tell anybody what I was doing or share anything, or, just kind of had scarcity mindset. Social media wasn't very popular back then. I think you were only 5 years old back then.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and for those of you, I'm just jabbing Greg, because he's a young guy. Honestly, admire you so much for what you've done at such a young age, for sure. But it was a long time ago, before social media was as prevalent right now. People weren't as open to sharing stuff, and it was just a different world. But I quickly realized that if I share what I know, that I get so much more in return. In fact, it gave me a lot of I really enjoyed helping people, because it made me feel good, and it made me feel good even from a place of ego. I mean, I'll kind of say it, just that I was able to teach other people something that changed my life. It just felt good to share that. Right. And so when I started to share it, the good thing is, when I started to share it, people would be like, hey, can we partner on a deal? If I bring you a deal, would you buy it for me? Opportunities started to pop up. So I just poured the gas on helping people, sharing stuff. And then people started to say, can you coach me? And I was like, I don't know. What does that entail? And then kind of figured out how to do coaching. And so did a tremendous amount of coaching for a lot of years. And it was started just in DFW, and then eventually went national, and then I stopped doing it. And now I'm starting to do it again, I guess. I've got, iterations of the business over time, but it evolved to a point to where, I was doing these things called Rehab Live, where people would come watch me rehab a house. And it was obviously, my contractor was rehabbing the house, but they would meet me at the house, and we'd meet there 3 times, right when we started, before we cleaned it out in all its glory, hoarder houses. Yeah. And then they'd come back a couple weeks later, and we've got it cleaned out, and we're putting it back together. And they come back a couple weeks later, and we're done. And we just sit around the house, 30, 40 people, and just sit around. I'd order a bunch of pizzas, and let's just talk about what just happened here, And people are just mesmerized by that. And for us, it's something we do every day. And, there was a time where I was mesmerized by that. And then you do it, and you're like, well, it's, it just becomes second nature, right? Just what you do. But that turned into lots of opportunities of coaching and other things as well. And so then what happened is I started to realize, hey, I need a bigger audience. I want to go bigger than just the Dallas-Fort Worth market. And I hired a video guy for a little while to kind of walk around houses, and we recorded a bunch of stuff. But very quickly, I realized that I needed, I decided to do a podcast, because I could get on, right now we're on Zoom recording this, and it's easy, right? Everything just works. But back then it was Skype, and we had some systems that record through Skype. But I was able to do it myself without having a video guy there and stuff. It was easy to kind of execute. So I moved to a podcast without really even knowing, again, there weren't a lot of podcasts out there at the time.
Yeah.
But that just opened up lots of other opportunities. And from the beginning, my Flip Nerd podcast was an expert interview podcast. So I'm interviewing guys like Matt Andrews and Joe McCalls of the world, and Trevor Mock and all these guys. And now we travel in packs. We're friends. We do stuff together. We're looking for opportunities together. They're in my mastermind. And what happened is I realized, after dealing with a lot of newbies and a lot of coaching, what I love the most is hanging out with people that I kind of view as my peers, people that we talk the same language. We're not talking about, does this real estate thing really work anymore? We're talking about how to get from 5 deals a month to 10 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Talking about scaling up and the issues of an entrepreneur, and, how do you reinvest your money after you've made a bunch, first world problems. But it's you can't have those types of conversations with just anybody, right?
100%.
And so then that was really kind of the beginning of Investor Fuels. I'm just going to start a mastermind and invite all my friends and try to be around people that are experienced, because it was refreshing to be around kind of what I refer to as peers, right?
That's so good, man. And it's so
Yeah.
true because with new investors, it's almost like there's like this big division line where it's almost like it's like above the fold and below the fold. If you're like into the marketing stuff, it's like once you're on the other end of it, you can't you can help somebody out but someone who's never made money in real estate can't relate to someone who's like, I got 900 cash in the bank and I don't know how to pay tax. Like stuff
Right.
like that. It just blows their mind. Same thing when you go to Christmas dinner with your family and friends. Like I don't tell them what I do because I don't want to sound like an asshole, but I'm like, hey,
right.
Yeah.
That's the thing is you want to have conversations with people that are experienced and you're not bragging. It's just like, who else am I going to talk to this about? Like I can talk to my wife, but we don't know all the answers. So we're like, who do I talk to about like this big tax issue or what to do when this happens? And the types of things that only happen to people that are more experienced usually. Right.
Totally. So, it's so true. And that's why I want to just make a shameless plug here for the investor field. Like I was just hanging out with you guys in Vegas last month and we just all went to Vegas for 4 days, stayed at the Bellagio and had nice dinners and had some fun activities. But obviously everyone talked business, but it's just refreshing to be able to get to an environment like that where you're not like this like redheaded stepchild figuratively. And you can tell people, like, I think another thing I like about the whole concept of masterminds is you can be vulnerable and it's okay. Like if you're struggling and there's a problem, you have 50 other people who have most likely have solved that problem before. And you could spend some serious face-to-face time with them to get that problem solved. And then you can do the same for them. So it's invaluable to say the least. It's completely invaluable.
No doubt. You can't, we might go out with people that are in our neighborhood or my son's friends' parents or things like that. And I can't say, I would never say it like this, but I can't say I'm about to take my 6th vacation of the year or whatever, because it sounds like I'm bragging. I wouldn't say it like that, but it did happen once. We were with some friends in our neighborhood and they're like, oh, what are you guys doing the rest of the month? And I'm like, well, we're going, I can't even remember where it was. We're going somewhere. We're going to Cabo next week. And they're like, didn't you just get back from vacation? And it made me just shut down. I was like, I worked hard to get to this point in my life and this is the life that I want to live. And do I travel more than the average person? Yes. Is that the life I want to live? Yes. But I feel like I have to suppress it now because it makes somebody else feel bad that they get 2 weeks of paid vacation a year, right? It's like, okay, I see how this goes. Let's just talk about the weather then,
Let's talk about the Ukraine, Sleepy Joe and all that bullshit. So
none of that lights a fire under me, right?
No, I can't do shallow conversation with people, man. And it's not that I'm better than them and they're worse than me. It's absolutely
but that's great for like a minute or two. And then what do you talk about? Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, but so you built Investor Fuel. Obviously, I think I could be wrong here, but didn't you guys start in correct me if I'm right. I think it was like maybe in this fall of 2017 or 18. And it was like,
I think it's 17 because coming up here this fall will be our 5-year anniversary. Kind of hard to believe that, but
that's unbelievable, man. Almost a half decade of doing investment. Oh man. I remember I was so nervous the first time I went because I didn't know anybody and I was actually young.
How old were you? So I don't know how old are you now?
I'm going to be 27 in 2 weeks. So
so you were like 22. You were just barely legal to drink pretty much.
I was super young. I was really young and super nervous. I didn't know anybody either. Like now I can say by being a part of masterminds, they become your really good friends. Like, it's not just like you're going to see them for 90 days. And then it's like, no, you're in touch with them. You're always calls.
Well, you primarily got there because you were doing some stuff with John. That was the real thing. John was, you were like his protege or something. So
I was. That was a long time ago, man. It's just crazy how time flies. Like I remember I was thinking about moving to California and now I've been here for almost 4 years and still haven't paid taxes out here. I hope they don't hear that, but it's amazing what can happen in a relative short period of time. So how have you grown Investor Fuel? Because obviously, it started out as a small group and now it is, a massive mastermind in our industry, which is also pretty massive. So there's got to be some ways that you have scaled that to where you can ultimately serve the most amount of people and build a great community.
What's crazy? It's a hard thing to market because 9 out of 10 people or more are not qualified to even be a member of our group. You have to be actively doing deals at a minimum, at least a deal a month. Like we have 2 different, we have 2 different groups. We have a gold group, there's people that are doing 10 to 50 deals a year. And then we have a platinum group that's people doing 50 and up. We have a subset that's a platinum plus group, people that are doing 100 and more, a little subgroup there. I'm not sure if you even were aware of that. And we've got, a couple dozen people that are in that group. And now we have multi-family groups that's fairly new. So it's evolved, but it's really word of mouth. Like, we have an amazing family. We've got a ton of people that have been in from the very beginning, or that joined 4 years ago, but they've never left. And as time goes by, we have kind of more and more OGs that just like started and never left, and they've been in for a long period of time. And I think, just like you said, we go to Vegas and travel together, because we don't just have the quarterly masterminds, as you know. We've got Vegas. We're going to Cabo this fall. We're going
Colorado,
snowmobiling and dog sledding in Yellowstone in January. Like, we go out and like kind of live life together, right? And the truth is for me, it's a business, the mastermind. I have a team to support, like all these things, but it's my family, right? I've got my first family, and this is my second family, and it's all intertwined. I used to try to keep business and personal life separate. It's all the same right now. And so it's really just people becoming great family members, and just word of mouth of like, hey, I know somebody that would be a great fit. Can you talk to them? And it's really been kind of organic.
Yeah, no. And I can say this, I've had several people personally call me up and say, hey, I've been thinking about joining Investor Fuel. Like, yeah, I saw, because you know what it is? I'll tell you what you guys do real well too. I literally have about 55 Investor Fuel t-shirts in my big ass closet, right? Literally right behind me. And they're gym shirts, they're dinner shirts. I mean, I wear these things sometimes to sleep. So people just see me like on camera, and they see I have that shirt on. And then they're like, oh, I'm thinking about joining a new mastermind. And I'm always like, yeah, let's get on the phone. And I tell them the truth. It's a great group, and I've gotten a lot of value from it. So I can see that snowball effect with the word of mouth, because, you know, it's just, I want to just compliment you for a minute here, because I don't understand how you do this, but everybody in Investor Fuel is a good person, right? There, you guys have some I guess you have some filtering system where there's no assholes in there. There's really,
we give everybody an injection when they first start.
Is that it? Is that why my
like a culture? Really, truthfully, it is a culture injection, and it's not a physical injection. You're not giving anybody vaccines, but our culture is very unique in that we tell people right up front, like, I don't care how big of a rock star you are. We've got some guys in the group that are doing 50 or 60 deals a month, right? And so like, but you wouldn't know it. Like, they could get up and present and even talk about it, and it usually doesn't come out. Like, people have done some amazing things, and they're not getting on stage to brag. They're just talking about what I'm doing and what works and what doesn't work. And sometimes I just pull the modesty out of them. I'm like, hey, dude, like, I know what you've really done. Like, talk about that. Like, help people get to that level, you know? Yeah. And so it's like, we just really kind of tell people to check their ego at the door and be really focused on giving and sharing. And, you know, even me, I get people all the time. They're like, hey, can you reach out to me? I've got something I want to share with you, or they want to, I saw you post this and you need help with that. Can we talk about it? And even my own members are trying to help me. Right. And I think another thing that I've done that's kind of evolved over time is just kind of stepped back. I mean, I have a lot of experience, and I'm not the most experienced person in my room for sure, but I don't make Investor Fuel about me. It's about a peer-to-peer group of people helping one another. And so it's really taken on a life of its own, where our members are traveling together, and they're friends, and have all these things that are happening even outside of Investor Fuel, but they have this common bond that is, they do the same thing, and they met at Investor Fuel.
Yeah. I could say you guys are world class. I'm saying this seriously. You guys are world class at doing that event.
I appreciate that, buddy.
Dozens and dozens of them. And you guys are consistent. You're world class, and you got a rock star team too behind you.
I appreciate that. Yeah. We you know, it used to be just a thing we do. Just like when everything you start, it's kind of new. It's like, oh, there's this thing we're doing. And now it's become a big part of our identity. And, you know, it's just a fun thing to do too, right? That's to kind of curate these events and curate these relationships.
Totally. So I got another question for you. I don't know if this is reality yet. Who do you think, if we had to select one member to get the first Investor Fuel tattoo, who do you think would get the first? Because I feel like you guys are getting there now.
You know who it would be.
I know who it would be.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. Yeah. Tattoo. It's coming in a couple years.
I think I told him once that I'll pay for it if you get it, but I don't know if there's any legal ramifications of that, but anyway. Yeah.
Well, you can always get a lip tattoo. And then if you don't, you know,
that's
you can hide it.
You're kind of a trendsetter, Greg. You could do that and start us off.
You know what, I'll tell you what, believe it or not, I have 0 tattoos on me. I'm clean as a whistle, as they say, but
you're anyway, still young.
I am. You know, it's funny. Everyone keeps saying that. And I've been like, that is true, but I'm actually getting older, you know, like I'm getting to 30. It's going to be here sooner rather than later. So I see kids coming in the business now. And I'm literally saying kids do 20, 21 years old, and they're they're crushing it, you know? And
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. When I was
Yeah, we've got Justice Soto is in our group, and he's a young guy. He's probably 22, maybe 23, and he's crushing it in Florida. So I don't know if but you're not the youngest. You're definitely not the youngest guy in the group.
Not even close anymore. I'm probably in the mid tier now. A little bit older.
I don't know about that, but
we'll see.
Anyway.
Anyway, so you've also done some things in the multifamily space, and I wanted to make sure we covered that. So you've obviously built some amazing businesses. You still have these great companies. You've pivoted also into the multifamily business. And the reason I want to bring this up is because the typical real estate investor evolution, at least from what they tell me, is I want to wholesale, then I want to flip, then I want to buy single family houses, and then they hate the business all of a sudden. Then they want to buy apartment deals and become Donald Trump. So it's like everyone talks about that, but you're someone who actually has done it, right? I'm not saying you're Donald Trump, by the way, but just you've gone through that evolution, right? So how did you first cut your teeth in the multifamily business? Because that's a completely different business than what we're doing on the condo and duplex side.
Yeah. So let me talk about kind of why, right?
Yeah.
So for me, early on, I knew that I wanted to build a rental portfolio. And the reason that I thought I wanted to do it, and the reason I did want to do it, just wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, is to have passive income. And it's not passive, but I do have recurring income, right? Yeah. And I do have a portfolio of rental properties in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, that most of which we bought from 2009 to 2013. So got a lot of killer deals for sure. I wish I could go back and keep a couple hundred more. Yeah, we certainly flipped, several hundred houses here. I wish we had kept more.
Yeah, same.
But we didn't. And then what happened is, in your business, this is how I view the business. You have like active income, and then you have like kind of long-term income, like stuff you want to build up for the future, for retirement, for whatever, right? To kind of build that recurring revenue stream. And, but for a long time in my business, because I ran at a pretty high volume, we needed to wholesale and rehab to feed the monster, like pay for marketing costs, pay for our office, pay for my staff and all that. And honestly, we made a lot of money along the way. And it's like, I wish we could have kept that one as a rental. I could forego making like 30 grand right now, but I'm going to keep it as a rental. But it just felt, when you're in the business, it's like, you're always like feast or famine. So you're just like, give me the money now. And what's the worst that could happen? The worst that happened for me is you get down the line and you have some regret that I should have just tucked that away, because I didn't really need that money right then, not to brag, but we live pretty frugally, and I just wanted to cover my costs, and I covered my costs in the business and personally, but I wish I'd kept more, basically. So now I find myself down the line where I have other income streams from other businesses that I have going on. And I don't need, I'm willing to forego today income for long-term stuff, like wealth building stuff. And looking at my 40 rental properties and saying, how could I 10X that? That would be a nightmare, to buy hundreds of houses one at a time at this point in my life. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I just need to do bigger deals. So I still have today income, a lot of things that I do, but I try to plow as much of it as possible into bigger deals. And that's multifamily for me. And for us, multifamily is syndications of 100 doors or more. We have a deal under contract right now. It's a $41 million deal. So doing deals, like that are $15 to $50 million deals that really, really move the needle. And truthfully, a lot of them don't move the needle now, but over the course of 5+ years, it really moves the needle, right?
Yeah. Are you buying these value add, or are you buying stuff that's already performing that you can improve?
So we buy stuff. So most of the stuff I do, I'm partners with Corey Peterson, the big kahuna. Yeah. And we do these together. And truthfully, he used to be a single family guy, then got into multifamily probably eight or 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And when I wanted to move in that direction, we were already great friends and become really great friends. In fact, he was one of the founding members of Investor Fuel as well, was there at the very first meeting. And he always kind of felt out of place. He's like, I'm here, I love the culture, but everybody's talking single family and I'm a multifamily guy. But he was still kind of in the family. He was just the weird uncle that does something different than everybody else, right? But everybody wanted to hang out with him. We don't really know what he does, but he's a cool guy, right? So over time, I was just like, I need to do more multifamily deals. And so I invested in a couple of deals as a LP, just passively with Corey.
Yeah.
And then I kind of learned the business a little bit and figured out how I could add some value in there. So now I'm a GP in all the deals over the past, 3 years or so. So I help raise money for the deals and put my own money in and things like that. But one is, I guess the couple lessons there. One is I partnered with somebody that knew what they were doing, Right. And I value that because that's what I teach too. Like if you don't know what you're doing, you should hire a coach, join a mastermind, whatever, and learn from other people. So I kind of practice what I preach in that regard. But we typically buy properties that are performing now. They're already cash flow positive. And we just feel like we can improve the operations a little bit here and there. So we're not buying stuff that's like, not the way that I bought single family houses, not like,
like
boarded up
rehabs.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not heavy rehabs. Sometimes we see an opportunity to improve them. Like, hey, half the property has been rehabbed and they're getting 20% more in rent. And so we're going to come in and finish the rest of the rehabs and get a lift on rent there. And we're going to buckle up the management a little bit because it's a little bloated. And, we're going to do a better job of marketing. Like we find some ways to get the value increased, but it's already performing now. We're not buying stuff that's like, bombed out.
Yeah, that's the total other end of the spectrum in the multi-business.
Right.
You buy these, you get a bridge loan and you go into like a high risk gut rehab, and then you basically have this huge refi at the end. That can work, but that's a totally different business model. It's probably a little bit harder to get investors on board for that if you were to ask me, just because more volatility, more things out of your control. But no, it's smart. And then, do you guys plan do you guys normally do like a hold for 5 years and refi, or do you guys like to exit? I mean, what is the game plan for these?
It could be either. It could be, they're usually 5-year projects, and we hold them for 5 years and then either sell it or refi and cash out our investors. Maybe hopefully, move them into another deal. But as the owners, like we have a lot of the risk up front because we're personally liable for the deal, and we have to do all the work to kind of get it up to the next level. And our investors typically get a pretty good return as well. But eventually the owner class wants to get the investor class out of the deal so that we can move them on to another deal, and then we can kind of take over a bigger piece of the ownership, I guess.
Absolutely. No, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, there's a reason why some of the wealthiest people in America have done it through, commercial, apartment building, investing and all that stuff. Are there states that you don't buy in? Like, for example, New York, San Diego, like shit like that, where you're just, because that's something I would look at. Like, I know my markets really well, but I also know that I have rental properties in the blue states, quite frankly. And I have evictions going on now. I have problem tenants. I have and I'm seriously considering, I'm like, all right, well, do I really want to get involved in New York State with these rental laws? Like if I'm going to have 70 of these things, like, so
we don't own any in California and none in New York, but we can really kind of focus on, solid B plus type properties, they might be 15, 20 years old. And they're in secondary markets a lot of times. So we actually have a fair bit of student housing, which is kind of unique because they split the leases into bedrooms and have individual leases. The parents guarantee it. It's pretty cool. So, so there's some, we usually, I'd say kind of Midwest, Southeast, Southwest a little bit, but not much on the coast. We just closed on one in Virginia and one in North Carolina, but they're not on the coast. They're kind of inland,
Yeah. I could see that being I have condos and single families and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just saying the way I look at it, like in these anti-landlord states, from experience, is like, if you're trying to do like a value add and you can't get a tenant out it will take 6 months or $10,000 plus in cash, it's like, to me, I'd be like, well, if I'm an investor, I'm going to pay less for that because I know that I don't have really any leverage, like versus in Texas. I remember one time we did an eviction in Texas on a flip, and the guy was out in like a week. Right. And it was like, there was nothing, like, it was like a joke, I'm like, this is not my life, so I see that making sense where you guys stay away from these areas that are really anti-business, especially California.
Yeah, for sure.
California. Oh, interesting. So one more thing I want to cover, and then we'll wrap the show up. You recently, when I say recently, maybe like a year and a half ago, you started a company called The Investor Machine. And I have people who are raving about that, right? They love it. You guys provide a valuable service. So just why did you start it? What is Investor Machine? And we'll just chop it up a little bit about that.
Sure. So it's actually coming up on this summer. It'll be 3 years that we launched. Now we beta tested it in Dallas for like 6 months, and then we rolled it out in early 2020 to the rest of the country. So a little bit over 2 years, we've kind of been a national. Now we actually operate in about 350 markets around the country. But, back to coaching, investor fuel, like the single biggest kind of complaint or argument or question is always, how do I generate better leads? How do I generate better quality leads? What are the right lists to mail to?
Yeah.
And stuff like that, right? And so I know the lifeblood of our business, of really any small business, but especially in real estate, is leads, right?
Yes.
Better quality leads and more consistent lead generation. Most real estate investors are smaller shops. They're doing everything themselves. And so they're super inconsistent with a lot of what they do. And you just can't be inconsistent with lead generation. So I had actually, just from a past life, really kind of understood the value of having your lead generation done for you. And I just, a few different times I'd thought about starting an agency. It was more for new investors, just because most new investors can't even get out of the gate. They're like afraid to push the button in PropStream or whatever to like order the list. Like, I did all the filters they said, and they just like, I can't do it. What if I screwed something up? Right. And so they just don't do it. And so it really started as more for new investors, but the people that are in my circle now are mostly, more experienced investors for sure. So 2019, early 2019, were you out in the event that we had? This was like a little bit over 3 years ago. It's February 2019 in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I was there.
Were you out there? Sean Whalen spoke and all that. Yeah. So Jason Lewis, that was his first meeting, and he lives in Salt Lake City. So he joined then. And that very first meeting, we really hit it off, because he was actually doing some lead gen for about 2 or 3 other investors, just like friends of his. And we talked a little bit about it. And truthfully, the reason I didn't get into doing lead gen for people was I just operationally, I knew it was going to be a big challenge. Jason's a little more of an operational guy than I am. But I knew I had potential clients and customers, distribution, if you will. And so at that event, we talked and we just kind of hit it off about what we could do together potentially. And literally, I think we essentially formed this new business almost coming out of that meeting. It didn't really get started for maybe another 3 or 4 months. But what we really do is we go in we bring on a client, like let's say we were working with you. Then we go into your market, and we have almost 100 data miners now that all day, every day, all they do is go into the county and city where we operate at, which is, like I said, 350 counties now around the country, and mine data. So we're looking for like 40 different lists, and we don't get them all anywhere, but we try to get as many as we can. And obviously some of the obvious ones are probate, tax delinquent. There's a whole bunch of liens, mowing liens, IRS liens, ISD liens. There's all kinds of liens there. We look at arrest records, divorces, like all kinds of stuff, right? And then we built software that does kind of list stacking on steroids, but it takes into account that a probate is higher value than a mowing lien. And so we kind of score different leads based on the quality of that lead. And then we also score it based on the shelf life. So, a probate today is not a good lead 10 years from now, right? So over time, the point diminishes on these leads because they have kind of a shelf life, if you will.
Yeah.
So we really kind of this is the very best marketing list right now in this county to market to. What's your budget? And then we do the mail for them. So completely turnkey, done for you, direct mail and skip tracing if they want to do that. And it's just set up like a machine. We just do the mail for them and the skip tracing every single month, like clockwork. And, at this point we have nearly 100 employees. So it's grown pretty rapidly.
Holy, wow.
Yeah, grown pretty rapidly. A lot of those are data miners, but we have, a couple dozen kind of management level, and we have full on development team that's developing software and stuff. And so we've got a lot of moving parts. It's turned in from an idea over dinner to something much bigger than that.
Dude, you're like the business exploder in a good way.
Well, hey, we've got a big team. We've got a great team, and we've got a lot of people that are depending on us too. And so, we really do lead gen. A number of highly respected investors, let's say, have counted on us to just take over their lead gen, and we don't take that lightly. And there is no silver bullet. Like, all this stuff is hard, but we feel like we have a little bit of an edge on certainly the average person for sure.
Absolutely, man. Well, I want to definitely cover that. I mean, we talked about a lot of great stuff today. I could talk to you for hours, but I want to definitely respect our listeners' time. So listen, Mike, I mean, it's always fun to have you on the show. Yeah, I'll see you in like 2 weeks in person in Texas. So just before we wrap up, if people want to check out Investor Fuel, if they want to check out the where can people get connected if they're interested in any of the businesses that you have? Because you really add a lot of value, and I mean that sincerely.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I think, I take a lot of pride and a lot of responsibility in trying to put good stuff out, really trying to help. There's a lot of people that have come and gone in our industry, where there's a lot of people that are good at sales or are good at, kind of pitching stuff.
Yeah.
Like there tends to be a lot of people that sell something that sounds really good, but they can't necessarily fulfill it on the back end. And so we kind of pride ourselves on not being that guy, right? None of this is perfect for sure. But so we created a couple links, Greg, because I want to make sure if people are coming through your show that we know that they're a friend of yours and we'll take good care of them. So we have, if you go to investorfuel.com/pave the way or theinvestormachine.com/pave the way, we'll know that they came from you. But our processes for both of those are really just to schedule a call with our team and we can talk some more about it. Actually, on the link I gave for theinvestormachine.com/pave the way, I created a short video about 15 minutes that kind of walks through our process. And I just talked about it a little bit here, but maybe a little bit deeper as to what we do and how it works. And after you've watched that video, if people are interested, they can schedule a call down below there and get on the phone. Truthfully, we only allow a certain number of people in markets, and we have some major markets that are already full. So the first thing we want to check out is your market even available? And we can kind of tell you more about how our process works and see if it's a fit.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, we'll make sure we have those links in the show notes. And it's always a pleasure talking with you. I'll see you in a couple of weeks, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for
you too, buddy. Thanks for the opportunity.